Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So guys, Femi Falana is at it again, schooling all these people on law as it pertains to Nigeria. But then of course the people that he's schooling are really quite staggering, and it is alarming that these people have to be taught how the law works in Nigeria and what the law means and the interpretations of the law and what is constitutional or not, because of course now Femi Falana now is now effectively having to school the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation on law and the constitution of the country. So now let's get into it. Falana reveals minister behind Buhari's refusal to obey court orders. So that's the headline. Falana reveals minister behind Buhari's refusal to obey court orders. So now let's now see what the SAN is up to this time around. A frontline human rights lawyer, Femi Falana, has tackled the Attorney General of the Federation, AGF, Abubakar Malami, SAN, for the federal government's disregard to court orders and the rule of law. The legal luminary pointed out that as a military head of state, Buhari released 13 out of the several persons detained under Decree 2 of 1984 on the basis of court orders. He said if Buhari could listen to the advice of the then Attorney General of the Federation, the late Chike Ofedeli, SAN, he would not have disagreed with Malami. So in effect, what Femi Falana is saying then is that all this disobedience of court orders is effectively the advice being given to Malam Buhari by Malami, because of course he's indicating that even when this guy had absolute power as a military head of state, he was following the advice being given him by the Attorney General of the Federation then, and he was releasing then people who had court orders to effect their release. So if he was as a military dictator obeying court orders, then there's absolutely no reason to imagine that as a civilian president now, he would not be obeying court orders unless of course he's been advised not to do it. So now that advice of course is pointing in the direction of the Attorney General, because of course the Attorney General is the lawyer effectively of the government, is the government's legal advisory person. So in effect, Femi Falana is pointing in the direction of Malami. The human rights lawyer also pointed out that only the president and state governors have the right of prerogative of mercy, adding that the Attorney General of the Federation had no constitutional right to release any detained person on compassionate grounds. You will recall, of course, that Malami was saying that he was releasing Dasuki and Sowore both off the back of court rulings and on compassionate grounds. So is that compassionate ground element that Falana is querying? Maybe that guy just used it as a safe face, but of course, but Falana, being a man of law, is looking to the legality of what this guy is saying, because he's saying in effect to this guy that, look, anything that you do say in your position as the Minister of Justice of the Federation has to be to the letter in conformity with the law. You can't just make arbitrary statements and attach it to a sort of like a legal backing. It doesn't work that way. It has to abide by the Constitution, and it has to be within the remits of your position. So this is effectively what Femi Falana is querying really with this statement that's been made by the Attorney General of the Federation. So we carry on. Falana stated this in a statement on Sunday in reaction to comments made by Malami through his spokesman, Dr. Umar Gwandu, on BBC Hausa and the Hausa service of the Voice of America, whilst explaining why the federal government released Omoyele Sowore and Sambo Dasuki from custody. Falana's statement reads, "As you are no doubt aware, only the president and state governors are entitled to exercise the prerogative of mercy or release any convicted person on compassionate grounds by virtue of Section 175 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999. So he goes on to quote legal precedents, which I shall not. Let me just leave out that bit. It says the Supreme Court held that a person convicted of murder and sentenced to death by a high court and whose appeal is pending at an appellate court cannot be pardoned by the head of state or governor of a state pursuant to section 175 and 212 of the 1999 Constitution until the appeal has been finally determined. It follows to reason that the power of prerogative of mercy cannot be invoked to justify the release of a person standing trial and who has been admitted to bail but detained illegally by the State Security Service for alleged security reasons. With respect, the federal government has itself to blame for the needless controversy that has trailed the release of the duo. In the case of Sowore, the State Security Service refused to comply with the order made by Justice Taiwo for his release on bail. Even after the order of Justice Ojukwu for the release of Sowore and his co-defendant Olawale Bakare had been reluctantly obeyed, a gang of armed security operatives stormed the court to rearrest the former. In the process, he was brutalized in the courtroom while Justice Ojukwu was forced to rise due to the disruption of proceedings in her court. The footages of the desecration of the court, which was widely circulated in the social media, exposed the federal government to unprecedented ridicule. Thus, despite the denial of involvement by the State Security Service in the show of shame, you have had to take over the case. However, we are flabbergasted when you turned round to inform us that you had no power to direct the State Security Service to comply with the order of the Federal High Court for the release of Sowore from custody. It is also on record that for about 4 years of detaining Colonel Dasuki, the federal government did not take steps to set aside or vary or stay the execution of the 5 orders which had granted him bail. So this is a very pertinent point being made by Femi Falana here. So what he's saying in effect is that, look, this guy Dasuki, especially, let's isolate him as a test case. This guy has been granted bail for 4 years. So you have neither gone to court to state that you are intending to detain him for these further reasons. You've not gone to court to ask the court to vary the terms of his bail or to set aside that bail. You have done absolutely nothing that the law requires, but you have just held on to this guy through sheer brute force. So it is effectively an illegal detention, really, because of course the court has already taken a position. If you then go on to act outside of what position the court has taken, then you are acting illegally, and you held on to this guy for 4 years with the absolute arrogance of not even going to the court to even attempt to have some sort of a legal backing for holding on to this guy. So this is what Falana is really saying here. So we carry on. As if the contemptuous act of the SSS was not enough, you repeatedly maintained that the orders could not be obeyed on grounds of national security. In confirming your curious position, the presidency said last Friday that the Attorney General of the Federation, who is the chief law officer, as far as the government is concerned, has convinced everyone, and the government inclusive, that there is a basis for their continued detention because the individual right must not undermine the collective right. But having belatedly deemed it fit to review your position and advise the federal government in line with the tenets of the rule of law, you ought to have apologized to both Sowore and Dasuki. That is what is expected of you in accordance with Section 32(6) of the 1999 Constitution. It is not an occasion for grandstanding or arrogant display of power. In a recent article entitled How Buhari Military Regime Released Detainees on Court Orders, I did recall that the Buhari military junta released 13 of several persons detained under Decree 2 of 1984 on the basis of court orders and on the advice of the then Attorney General of the Federation, the late Chike Ofedili. So now there you have it. This is Falana again having to explain the minutiae and the workings of the law in Nigeria to the Attorney General of the Federation. So this, of course, is a case of two people whose roles should be reversed, because, of course, Femi Falana should be the Attorney General of the Federation, really, and this guy, the Malami, the Abubakar Malami, who is the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, he really should be a practicing lawyer who is being schooled by Femi Falana as the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice. But of course, it is the practicing lawyer that is having to school somebody that should be at the forefront of defending the Constitution on what the Constitution actually means and how to interpret it. So it is Falana that is schooling these people. He schooled the DSS on the understanding that you cannot arrest somebody in the court premises. He is schooling this Attorney General of the Federation now that you do not have the prerogative of mercy within your remit. So he schools all of them on what the law is and what the law means and how to interpret the Constitution. And these people that he is schooling are the people at the forefront of defending that Constitution. Conversations in the comment section, role reversal is really what we're talking about here. Two people in completely different roles in life, and of course those roles, they'll probably be more suited if those roles were switched over. Come share thoughts about all this with me in the comment section. Femi Falana schools them again. What says you? But before you come share thoughts, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. The bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me what you are making of how this whole thing is positioned, with Falana schooling the Attorney General of the Federation on how to interpret the Nigerian Constitution. Does that not seem a bit topsy-turvy, or is that not upside down in your thinking? If it is, explain why. If it's not, let's have a conversation. Either way, let's meet in the comment section where this conversation carries on. So I'll leave you here. Carry on with you in the comment section, but here I say peace.